صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات، ورحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد بسم الله الرحمن بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك الذي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. Together. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. Together. ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي، وتجرأت بجهلي، وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي، كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي، وأفرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي، وقعدت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها، ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي، فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي، ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي، وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في الأحوال كلها رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي، من لي غيرك؟ أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا، مقرا مذعنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري، وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري، وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعدما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة، وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، وعلى أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين؟ يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدتي، أم لطول البلاء ومدتي؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين.
يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي رب يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرده، ومن كادني فكده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجدني بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. All together. يا سريعا يا سريع اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Before I begin tonight's class, just wanted to mention a few words about the situation that the Middle East is in right now. Tomorrow, inshallah, we'll address this more in Salatul Jum'ah. But just a few words. I noticed that some of the brothers or some of the people out there, they were bringing up this idea of that the occupation should have never been provoked so that none of this would happen. I just want to say that it's hard to, I'll use the words that some people use, that it's complicated. When you are under occupation for decades upon decades upon decades, and humiliation, dehumanization, degradation, suffocation, sieging, and all of the other problems that, and the bloodshed, and the slow death of a race as if is taking place, and an ethnicity, then it's, as they say, it's complicated. So it's hard to talk about that, and I don't think anyone of the people out there who are rational, people who feel that some things are irrational, it's easy for us to talk out here when we aren't suffering, we're not under too much pain and trouble, to say that, you know, this shouldn't have happened or that shouldn't have happened. That's, the judgment is not for us on that. That's one point I wanted to make. Another point that I wanted to make is that assuming that things shouldn't have happened the way they did, the price obviously right now is being paid by innocent lives, without a doubt. We can talk about the past 5 days, the past 5 years, the past 5 decades, but right now what's happening is that 99%, I would say, 99% of the targets right now that are the primary targets of the occupation, they are not being fulfilled. They're not being actually executed. The targets are, even if we say the targets are the ones that made the attack, the resistance, and so on, what's obvious right now is that those are not the ones who are dying, and those are not the ones who are being killed. And so what we are seeing is, I mean, you've seen it all, I don't need to explain too much. The babies that you see that are blown up, the children, the mothers, the wives, the elderly, the hospitals, the ambulances, the paramedics, everything, I mean, indiscriminately are being attacked now. And obviously it's very clear that this is going to be a little bit of a different case this time around, that an actual invasion maybe is going to be taking place. And so these are all just claims and excuses to be able to get some boots on the ground over there. I just want to point out in two cases about how we have a double standard going on here. Number one, double standard, it's always the case that people like to look back at the past and see how others suffered and mourn for them. And so when we look back a few hundred years ago, we are always, we're not even mourning for the Native Americans anymore, but we always talk about what happened to them. And really, when you read up on what happened, those were atrocities that took place, and genocide and massacres. So yeah, after a few hundred years, it's very easy to now say, yeah, it was all wrong, we shouldn't have done it. Well, you're seeing the same exact thing unfold right now. At the end of the day, we see, as I said, I would say 95% of the targets are not even being hit that you had. Your primary targets are not being hit. Yeah, so who's paying the price? All we're seeing is the exact same history repeating itself. You know what it's like? It's like the world is looking away and saying, you know what, make it as painless as possible, get it over with. Whoever you're going to kill, so that, we can move on to our mourning session for the ones who were killed. Then why should we go back a few hundred years? We can just go back maybe a couple decades ago and look at post 9/11 and what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, other places. It wasn't about WMDs, it was about other things. Who paid the price? God knows how many hundreds of thousands, if not above a million lives were lost. And now everyone's saying it was a mistake. Well, bismillah. It's all unfolding right now in front of us. But the world, as I said, the world is closing its eyes and saying that just get it over with sooner so that we can just, get on with our mourning and write in our history books that, yeah, this was one of those also cases. It's very interesting how history works and repeats itself, yet the people who are abidud dunya, yes, they will turn a blind eye again and again. So what do we do, inshallah? Whatever is going on, alhamdulillah, you see that there's been a huge mobilization, especially on social media. And there are rallies happening everywhere. Inshallah, the brothers and sisters do whatever they can to expose the lies, especially on social media. You see the lies, you'll see, we can understand Arabic, right? So when they are, for example, taking a child and they're protecting the child, and in Arabic they're saying we're not supposed to hurt the children, they'll take this on media, on the social media, and they'll say, see what they're doing to the children, You're like still listening to the Arabic. The Arabic is, the guy is saying the exact opposite. We're not supposed to hurt this person. And then they say, look what they're doing to the children. Anyway, these lies have to be exposed, inshallah, and the brothers and sisters try their best to do whatever they can, whatever, it's now or never really, it seems, because as I said, it looks like this time is going to be a little different. And as I wrap up, as I said, tomorrow, inshallah, this will be addressed more in Salatul Jum'ah. But what brings a little bit of, I hate to say it like this, but a little bit of tranquility to the heart is what we remember about the sorcerers of Musa's time. When Fir'aun, he told them to do whatever they had to somehow expose Musa's lies, and eventually they converted to Musa's religion. Fir'aun said, I'm going to punish you the worst of punishments, just like what's happening right now in the occupied lands, that these people are suffering so much. Fir'aun made sure that they suffer, these sorcerers suffer, but their answer to him was that all you can make decisions for is this life. Yeah? You can only do a qada of this life. Once we leave this world, whatever it takes, however much hardship we go through, our Lord will take care of us, and He'll also take care of you in another way. Or the other verse that talks about the shuhada of the battles during the Prophet's time, and the mushrikeen thought that when they take the lives of these individuals, yes, it's all over, but then the Quran says, قُلْ هَلْ تَرَبَّصُونَ بِنَا إِلَّا إِحْدَى الْحُسْنَيَيْنِ, that look, either we die or we survive. If we survive, that's something good. If we die in the way of God, that's also something good. These people that are losing their lives, in the end we know that they are going to a better place, and there is a Yawm al-Qiyamah, and there is a Yawm al-Hisab and reckoning that Allah is going to have. And finally, what Imam Hussein said, that هَوَّنَ بِي مَا نَزَلَ بِي هَوَّنَ عَلَيَّ مَا نَزَلَ بِي أَنَّهُ بِعَيْنِ اللَّهِ. That Allah is watching. Yes. Some people will lose faith in these situations. Why is Allah just watching? Some people will gain more faith and remember that Allah is watching, and the time will come. The time will come, whether in this life or the hereafter, that Allah will make sure everything is reckoned for, inshallah. With that, inshallah, as I said, tomorrow, hopefully that the brothers and sisters attend the Jum'ah and we address this matter more there as well, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we were speaking about khabar wahid, a khabar wahid that checks all the boxes and has a reliable chain of narrators and can be used in fiqh if, of course, the content of that khabar wahid is fiqh related. We said, what if we have such a hadith? What if we have such a khabar wahid that has not reached the point of giving us certainty, but it gives us a dhann, at least 80%, 60%, 70% certainty? Can we at least rely on that hadith the same way we rely on it in fiqhi matters, rely on it in non-fiqhi matters? That was the question. And so I said that in fiqh, you can say this matter is discussed in passing. It's not something that the fuqaha and the mujtahideen spend too much time on, because it's not related to fiqh to non-fiqhi matters that much. They have mentioned it on the side, and so it's alhamdulillah, at least we have that much. So in fiqh, it's not a big deal to discuss this matter because it's a non-fiqhi matter. But for us Muslims and us Shia, it makes a big difference to discuss this matter. Why? Because we're not dealing with fiqh as much as the maraji and mujtahideen are. We're actually dealing with a lot of non-fiqhi matters in our everyday lives, in our communities, in our centers, and so on. And I think it's very important for us to understand the background of this whole discussion and what some of these greats say. Is it as clear-cut as we would think or not? Some are of the opinion, yes, if it's khabar wahid, then in anything that's non-fiqhi, it's still binding. If it checks all the boxes, obviously. Some will go a step further, and we'll talk about these later. I'm just bringing them up here so that we have a little overview of what we want to talk about later in future sessions. Some will go a step further. They won't even say if it checks the boxes. You know what they say? If it's in any hadith book, and it tells us something about history, tells us something about belief system, tells us something about anything non-fiqhi related, we're supposed to take it. To the point that we have a new science called Islamic medicine. I don't want to say that I don't believe in it necessarily, all in all. Of course, the imams might have some guidelines when it comes to medicinal matters. But do we have a science? Some believe so, some believe not. But if you are going to believe so, then a lot of the material that you're going to use and content that you're going to use is going to be from khabar wahid, sometimes that checks the boxes and a lot of times doesn't check the boxes. Sometimes it's not even about a khabar wahid, it's about a whole book that was written and it is attributed to an imam. So it's not khabar wahid, it's kitab wahid, let's call it. Okay? Yeah, so these are all discussions. So as I said, we're dealing with this matter a lot. Moving forward, it's going to shape our identity, our beliefs, and so on. Anyway, having said all of that, if you can pull up the slides that were sent again, we want to move on to Ayatul Akhui. Shaykh al-Tusi, the great father of Shi'ism, one of the great fathers of Shi'ism, what did he say? He said, look, he was very clear about it, although it seemed that he was speaking about the basic beliefs, like Tawheed, Nubuwwah, Ma'ad, and these ones. The basic beliefs it seemed like he was talking about, but he was saying there's no way a scholar who knows what they're talking about would say that khabar wahid is hujjah in these matters. Okay. He says that, but as I said, it sounds like, when you look at the context, it sounds like looks like he's addressing what? He's addressing the beliefs that we are not supposed to do any taqlid in. And we're supposed to have yaqeen, actual yaqeen in. Okay? That God is one. The Prophet is the Holy Prophet. This is his book. Resurrection Day is coming. Not the details of it, like what it looks like exactly, but I know Resurrection Day is coming. These basic beliefs. So that's Shaykh Tusi. We moved on to the Ad-Din al-Iraqi. He made a nice point. He said, look, there is no, when we say that khabar wahid is hujjah on us, that means we're supposed to take it as yaqeen. Take it as yaqeen is different than actual yaqeen. And so, what does it even mean? He says, I can't even process this. I can't even register and understand this. To say that khabar wahid is hujjah on me when it comes to beliefs, for example, which means when I hear a khabar wahid that checks all the boxes, that says that in Yawm al-Qiyamah, this is what the sirat, for example, is going to look like, I'm supposed to gain yaqeen in it. I can't. That's something you can't tell me to do. Yaqeen is not in my hands. When someone tells me that there's a hadith that says this, that checks the boxes, the most I gain from that is dhann. They might have been mistaken. They might have done a naql bil ma'na and quoted just given their idea and understanding of the hadith to me, not word for word. Tell me it might have been fabricated. There's a million things that come into the picture. Even if it checks all the boxes, it's a reliable chain of narrators still. They're not ma'soom. So I don't have yaqeen in it. What do you mean? Khabar wahid is hujjah. So you must have yaqeen now. I can't have yaqeen. Yaqeen is an inner thing that is beyond my control. Either I'm convinced or not. They close your eyes, they walk you into a room, and they say, have yaqeen that there's an elephant in here. Because we're telling you, I don't know, open my eyes, if I see there's an elephant, okay. If not, then no. Yaqeen is one of those things that is beyond my control. Okay? And there's a lot of details here that I'm not going to get into, to the point that I'm just going to say this much, that in usul it is discussed that if someone has yaqeen and their yaqeen is wrong, they're sure it's daytime but it's nighttime, can I tell them not to follow their yaqeen? They have yaqeen. They're like, I'm seeing it's day. I am seeing it's day. What do you mean it's night? Okay, there's a whole discussion there. And so they say you can't tell them not to follow their yaqeen. Yaqeen comes and goes, not at my disposal, at my control. It's more than that. Okay, anyway. Ad-Din al-Iraqi sounded like that. He's like, what? There's no implications here that I can force you to follow that are in your control. And so what does he tell me? He says, listen, all you need to do, if a khabar wahid comes to you, say, Allahu a'lam, Allah knows best. Whatever the reality of the matter is, I have yaqeen in it. Akhund al-Khurasani sounded the same as well. Akhund Khurasani, he said something similar. He was of the opinion that no, you can't follow khabar wahid in those things. You have to have yaqeen in. All you need to do is say, I believe in whatever the reality of the matter is. So a lot of overlap with the Ad-Din al-Iraqi. And he had some details there, and I also mentioned, for those who might watch this later and say, oh, but there's a specific context in which Akhun Khurasani is speaking. Yes, I acknowledge that he's speaking about insidad and a context of insidadul ilm. I don't want to get into that. But all in all, you get this feeling that even in a non-insidadi context, he has the same opinion. All right, having said that, let's move on to Ayatollah Khou'i now. Ayatollah Khou'i, I was surprised, to be honest, of how he speaks in this regard. He has two books that we're going to talk about. Misbah al-Usul, number 1, and number 2, his tafsir book. We'll leave the tafsir book for later. For now, in Misbah al-Usul, over there, he says, look, we either have beliefs, Islamic beliefs, the details of, for example, barzakh, ma'ad, sirat, mizan, these ones. Are these wajib on us to learn? No. Are they wajib for us to have yaqeen in? No. And previous ulama that we covered also said the same thing, right? He says in these ones, that in these beliefs and details of beliefs, that it's not wajib for us to necessarily pursue and find yaqeen in. He says khabar wahid in these is hujjah. Very interesting. But then look at how he explains what hujjah means. What did we say hujjah means? Hujjah means that it's binding on us. Like if a khabar wahid that checks the boxes is reliable, is thiqa, comes to me and says to me that look, Salat al-Maghrib, Salat al-Isha, Dhuhr, Asr, all of your salats that are over 2 rak'ah, in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah, you have to do tasbihat arba'ah 3 times. If a khabar wahid comes and tells me that, that's hujjah on me. Meaning what? I have to do 3. I can't do 1. Right? But if you look at what Ayatollah Khou'i says when he's explaining what it means for khabar wahid to be hujjah on us in beliefs that are not wajib for us to gain yaqeen in, he says it is hujjah, meaning there is no objection to accepting what it says. La mani'a. This is not the wording we use when we're trying to explain what hujjah means. Hujjah means binding on you. You got to take it. It is munajjiz. It activates the taklif on you. Taklif is activated. And if it was wrong in reality, it is mu'adhir. It gives you udhr, an excuse before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. Why'd you do this? Well, because this. Okay, then it's accepted. That's a good excuse. We told you to follow this means, and the means got it wrong in this case. That's fine. Okay? That's what hujjah means. Let's move on to the next one. He says, that's Islamic beliefs. But with takwiniyat, meaning those things that might not have anything to do with Islam. They just have to do with the real and natural world that we live in. Okay? Like what? Like medicine. Like what? Like, well, history, some might argue that it's Islamic too, but in reality, if you look at it, history is a science that it's not an Islamic science. Yes, the subject matter might be an Islamic one that has to do with Islam and the advent of Islam and all of that. But in reality, history is not a Islamic thing like belief system is, theology is. Okay? I think he gives an example of, let me bring it up real quick. When he's talking about this takwiniyat, he says, for example, كَالظَّنِّ بِأَنَّ تَحْتَ الْأَرْضِ كَذَا أَوْ فَوْقَ السَّمَاءِ كَذَا. For example, he says, if you gain a dhann, 80% certainty, 70% certainty from a khabar wahid, that under the ground and under the earth, this is happening. Or above the sky, this is happening. Or, as I might have mentioned before, like is there life on other planets or not? We do have some hadith that say that might imply that there's life on other planets somewhere in the universe. These takwiniyat, he says, in these cases, khabar wahid is not hujjah. Interesting. What's the difference though? Unless you want to inform others, ikhbarul ghayr, to tell others that this is the case. This is where I get very confused, my brothers and sisters. What do you mean? He says, it's not hujjah unless you want to inform others. What does that mean? That means I can tell others that, hey people, there is life on other planets. Why? Because a khabar wahid told me. There is life on other planets? Okay, I can tell others, but I'm not supposed to believe in it myself? What does this mean? It's kind of confusing. And I think others have also pointed this out, we'll get to later, that it might be the case that Ajl al-Khwi really didn't actually mean this. And the one who's transcribing his lessons actually, and doing taqrir of his dars, actually wrote it in this way that implies. But anyway, it says if you want to do ikhbarul ghayr and tell others, that is a practical implication of khabar wahid. It is jaiz for you. You can go tell others that this is the case. You can go tell others, this is what the akhbar are telling me. Okay, but can I actually believe it? No, you can't. But he also says the same thing about hujjiyah here too. He says, there's no problem in doing this. Ikhbarul ghayr. There's no objection, and it will be hujjah. Yes, brother. Very good question. The question is, what if the imam, or what if the hujjiyah here is given by the ulama so that at least we preserve our heritage, okay? And it's passed on to next generations. So the next generations have the raw material to work with, okay? Who says I'm ma'soom? I might not be convinced, but maybe future generations will look at the same adillah, will look at the same corpus that we have, and come to different conclusions. Yes, if that was the case, we don't call it hujjah anymore, brother. We say, hey people, this hadith is mentioned in this book, I'm narrating it here, and that is exactly what Bihar al-Anwar, for example, has done. And a lot of other hadith books. But the best example for that is Bihar. He will himself might not accept that all of these hadiths are hujjah, but he says, I'm putting it here as raw material so the future generations can benefit. So we don't need hujjiyah for that. Hujjiyah means, usually when something is hujjah, that means you can attribute it to the religion. These ulama are very careful to attribute anything to religion. Okay? So if you say it's hujjah, then you can say, so now my question here is this to Ayatollah Khouyi. With all due respect, of course, I'm nothing compared to that, but why the separation between these two? Why the difference between these two? Why is it hujjah in Islamic beliefs, but in takwiniyat it's not? Because the reasoning that he brings, and he might bring this later too, is that the reasoning he brings and presents is it's been dictated to us by the shari', by the legislator, by Allah, okay, to take this as yaqeen. If we take it as yaqeen, all of the fruits of yaqeen come. If you remember, the Diyauddin al-Iraqi, he said the exact opposite. He said, if we're told to treat it as yaqeen, the fruits of practically the fruits will come. But the intellectual, the ones in the heart, they don't come with it because it's not yaqeen in my heart at the end of the day. Only practically I have to deal with it as yaqeen. Ayatollah Khouyi here is sounding the exact opposite. He's saying it's a yaqeen at the end of the day. So you can tell others, my question is this to Ayatollah Khouyi, well, if it's a yaqeen at the end of the day, and we're supposed to treat it as a yaqeen, why didn't you say it is hujjah in all the other sciences, the medicine, the history, what's above the sky, under the ground? Why do you only allow me to tell others about it, but I don't have the right to believe in it myself as an Islamic belief? Now, something that Islam allows me to believe in as reality. Okay? So there's a difference. One might argue that, okay, for him maybe because takwiniyat have no Islamic flavor to them at all, and so it's irrelevant for Islam to say believe in it. But when it comes to the Islamic beliefs, at the end of the day we're putting Islam in there, and so if I want to, if a khabar wahid is telling me that I'm supposed to believe in something, then I'm supposed to take it. Some might argue in that way, but let's move on now. So that was beliefs, that was takwiniyat, okay? Now we move on to his other book, which is his tafsir book, Al-Bayan fi Tafsir al-Quran. Over there, he doesn't talk about beliefs anymore, and khabar wahid and beliefs. He doesn't talk about takwiniyat anymore. Over there, he talks about hadiths that give us the tafsir of verses. And he discusses it there. And it's beautiful. I really like how he discusses these matters. This is a tafsir book of his, but it's really more of a Quranic sciences book, really, because he has a long introduction, which is all Quranic sciences and other matters as well. And he never really gets into doing tafsir in this book of his. He only does tafsir of Surah Fatiha. Yeah. If he had continued, it would have been nice. But he himself, according to what's narrated and quoted, is that he said, they told him, Tabatabai, he did that. Why didn't you do it? He said, Tabatabai dhaha bi nafsihi. He killed himself to do this. And of course, Ayatollah Khouyi had a lot of other responsibilities that he had to take care of. So it's hard to write a book like this. Anyway, it's still great, and it's still something that we cherish, this book of his, this Al-Bayan fi Tafsir al-Quran. I don't know if it's been translated. Something tells me it has been translated too. And I think you can find it on islam.org. Yeah. Anyway, it's one volume. Tafsir, he says the hadith that talk about tafsir. He says some might not agree that reliable khabar wahid is hujjah in matters of tafsir, because khabar wahid is only hujjah where we have practical implications. And this is only in fiqh, not in tafsir. In tafsir, you just have to believe that this verse means this. For example, I'll give you an example. The hadith says, as I said before, Kaf ha ya ain sad is talking about Karbala. Kaf stands for Karbala, Ha stands for I forgot, Ya stands for Yazid, and so on and so forth. Okay. He says that there are no practical some say that there are no practical implications here. It's just something you have to believe. And so because there are no practical implications, khabar wahid is not hujjah. Ayatollah Khouyi says this is what some people might say. But I will say in response to that this is incorrect. Because we are supposed to take the dhann, that 80% certainty that we gain from a khabar wahid that checks the boxes. We are supposed to take it as a yaqeen and apply all of the rules of yaqeen to it. Remember, I said this is his argument. This is his reasoning for what he believes in. Therefore, it is correct to quote what the khabar says, and I've underlined this for a reason, because the one who's going to come after this to explain what Khouyi means, he's going to use this line here. He says, therefore, it is correct to quote what the khabar says. The same way we can share what we have yaqeen in. And it won't fall under the category of saying that which you don't have certainty of. So in the Quran, it tells us you're not supposed to talk to people about and believe in things that you're not 100% sure about. He says, if we take a khabar wahid and go and tell others of what it says, we don't fall under the category of those who are or sharing things that they don't have certainty in. Okay. The first paragraph that I read, he said, some people say there are no practical implications. And so khabar wahid is not hujjah. He just gave us a practical implication. What was it? That you can tell others that this is what the hadith says, and this is, I guess, what we can believe in. Now let's go to our next alim that explains what he thinks Ayatollah Khou'i means. And remember, we have an underline here. I underlined something in what Ayatollah Khou'i says. He's going to bolden that. Who is that? That's Ayatollah Larijani. In an article that he has, it's in Arabic. It's been translated to Arabic. I couldn't find the original Farsi, no matter how much I looked. But in that Arabic article, it's a long one too. He goes into what Ayatollah Khou'i would have probably meant here by what he says. He says, look, intellectual implication of submission and embracing and believing what the khabar wahid told me, he says Ayatollah Khou'i probably doesn't mean that. What do you mean though? Look what he said. Look at his reasoning. He says, aha, we'll talk about that in a minute. He says, look, I personally think Ayatollah Khou'i does not believe in the intellectual implications of khabar wahid being hujjah. That you have to believe and have yaqeen in what the khabar wahid says. What he does believe in is the actual practical implication, which is attribution to God and Islam and ikhbarul ghayr and telling others and quoting it to others. He says that's what he only believes in. What's your reason for that? He says that the reasoning, he says, look, I'm stuck between two things. Ayatollah Larijani says this. He says, Ayatollah Khou'i, on one hand, he gave reasoning. The reasoning encompasses both practical and intellectual implications of khabar wahid being hujjah. The reasoning was, take it as yaqeen. That means you believe in it too. But on the flip side, and that's the part that I underlined in this previous slide. On the flip side, Ayatollah Larijani says, look man, all of the discussions we're having right now regarding khabar wahid in non-fiqhi matters, be it beliefs, be it takwiniyat, be it tafsir, the whole discussion is, are we supposed to believe in what the khabar wahid says or not? And take it as deen, not quoting it to others. No one cares about that. He says the fact that Ayatollah Khou'i doesn't give that example of quoting, of believing, and as they call it, aqdul qalb alayh, but rather only gives the example of, hey, you can quote it to others, when he very well knows that the whole discussion is where? Is on submission, embracing, believing in what the hadith says. When he knows that's where all the discussion is. But then he says, hey people, it's hujjah on you, which means you can tell people, I found a practical implication for it. And that is to tell others about it and quote it to others. And you won't be the type of person that is quoting something or saying something that they don't have yaqeen in, as the Quran scolds. The fact that he only brings such an example, which is a very bad example for what we're talking about right now in our discussion, he says this shows that he doesn't actually believe in it. The fact that if there's a khabar wahid, that checks the boxes, that we have to believe in whatever it says, even if we don't have 100% certainty in it. So let's read what he says. It says, Ayatollah Rajani says, Ayatollah Khou'i's reasoning implies that he believes khabar wahid is hujjah, because he said you take it as yaqeen. But the example he gives for its hujjah is only the practical implication that we put a check mark next to here in the slide, while what everyone is pursuing in these discussions is the intellectual implication, habibi. Everyone's talking about that. What do you mean giving us this example? It shows you don't believe in that one. Something was holding him back from actually saying it, okay? In this book of his. So in this book, if he isn't really interested in khabar wahid being hujjah in tafsiri hadiths, one might be able to extrapolate here and conclude that he probably didn't believe in it in that previous slide, in his previous book, Misbahul Usul, Where over there he sounded like he believed in it when it comes to beliefs. Over there we said it has a flavor of Islam in it at the end of the day. Well, tafsir also has a flavor of Islam in it. But in the end, brothers and sisters, let me say something. He says here, let me just end this paragraph first. The fact he only gives this example shows he probably actually doesn't believe in the intellectual implication, okay? That you are supposed to actually believe in what the Khabar Wahid says, even if you don't gain 100% certainty in it. Having said all of this though, brothers and sisters, personally, I think that the reasoning Ayatollah Khouy gives, if we just take what he's saying in his books and what has been transcribed from his dars, according to these books, the reasoning he gives is just too strong of a reason to believe that he believes in Khabar Wahid being Hujjah. The only ace we have up our sleeve though is in both cases in Misbah al-Usul. What did he say? He said, oh, there's no objection. It's okay for you to believe in what it says. What? Sayyidina, please. That's not what hujjah means though. When we're talking hujjiyah, we're talking binding. We're talking you have to believe in it now. He didn't say that. He said you can. And this is very close to what, hopefully in the end, I'll talk about a little bit. My understanding, my very humble, worthless understanding of this whole thing is that Khabar Wahid, when it comes to these non-fiqhi matters, it's not that it's worthless. No, it can be very valuable actually. Yeah? But something along the lines of what Ayatollah Khouy said, like, hey, we can follow it maybe, you know, but with some conditions. Those conditions are important. That we'll probably talk about later, inshallah. So with that, I think it should be enough. We have Shaykh al-Ansari, the great, inshallah. What he says is very important as well. We'll cover that, inshallah, in our next session. Any questions before we end? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.